58 people are now confirmed dead and more than 500 others injured after a gunman went on the rampage at a Las Vegas music festival. The incident has become the deadliest mass shooting in modern US history. And I must warn you, you may find this video coming up next disturbing.
What is it?
I don't know. The shooting took place during an outdoor performance by country singer Jason Aldean at a three-day music festival. It was attended by an estimated 22,000 people. Gunmen fired at crowds from the 32nd floor of a nearby hotel and casino. There were multiple rounds, as you heard there, of rapid fire. Witnesses say it lasted somewhere between 5 and 10 minutes. We can show you another video now from the scene of people taking shelter in a tent at the festival as they heard multiple shots outside. We spoke to a man who was working near the scene of the tragedy, as well as an eyewitness. They told us how people were scared but had nowhere to hide.
At the time, I was actually working security at the event, and what had happened was I walked away from my post, which I'm glad that I did, and where I was supposed to be standing was actually was in front of the main stage where majority of the stuff was happening. When I heard the first round of gunshots, and I thought to myself that it was the music. When the second round of gunshots came, it was clear that it was gunshots and it wasn't the music messing up. So once I heard that and I seen people started running, I completely just dropped everything and just ran. There was police officers, majority of everywhere. I actually ran into a complex and just remember going inside this guy's house, and there was a whole bunch of people already in there, and they had all the lights turned off, and they were telling everyone to be quiet because it was still nearby and we didn't know if the shooter was walking around or not.
There were people running up and down the strip because the hotels did go on lockdown. People weren't able to go into hotels, so if you were caught out on the street, you were basically stuck out there. Especially when you're at a concert, you don't expect for something like that to happen. So it was pretty scary to see people not really knowing where to go or what to do. It's terrifying. My heart was breaking for the people because they don't have anywhere to go, because the hotel's rules are that you cannot let people in or out for our safety, and in that point, you don't really know what to do.
From 1996 until June of this year, the United States has seen 130 mass shootings. Almost 900 adults and 145 children have been killed. And these numbers don't include the latest massacre in Las Vegas. Plus, there are question marks over what exactly is officially classed as a mass shooting. With more on this is Kelly Maupin.
The attacker has been identified as Stephen Craig Paddock, a 64-year-old man. In his hotel room, he apparently had 10 different rifles. Now, when the SWAT team broke into the hotel room from which he was shooting at the concert attendees, they determined that he was already dead. It appears that Mr. Paddock took his own life after opening fire and killing 58 people outside the concert. At this point, he's being referred to as a lone wolf. The ISIL terrorists have claimed responsibility for the attack and said that the shooter was associated with them, but the FBI disagreed disagrees and says that no link to any international terrorist group can be established.
We have determined to this point no connection with an international terrorist group. As this investigation continues, we will continue to work with our partners to ensure that this is factually, thoroughly, and absolutely investigated.
Now, the shooter did live in a retirement village just outside of Las Vegas. And in the home of the shooter, it is apparent that there was some additional ammunition. Law enforcement is saying that they don't really have a profile on this person, meaning that he did not do anything to attract the attention of law enforcement prior to his act. The shooter's alleged girlfriend, a 62-year-old Australian woman, is considered to be a person of interest in police investigations. The police say that at this point they have many hours of surveillance footage from security cameras to look over to determine exactly how the shooter was able to bring the 10 different firearms to his hotel room. Now, following incidents like this, there's almost always a cry for gun control. With 58 people dead, this is being called the largest mass shooting in modern U.S. history. Let's take a look over some of the incidents that have taken place over the last few years in the United States.
Speak now to Michael Malouf, who's a former Pentagon official. Good to have you on, Michael. Islamic State, it's become a kind of routine now. People die, innocent people die. Islamic State claim responsibility. As I understand, the FBI is saying that they haven't found any link at all to international terrorist groups. What's your opinion? Do you see any hallmarks of ISIL in there?
Well, I think it's a little premature for the FBI to state conclusively that that they haven't found any connections in light of ISIS's claim, although ISIS will try to always claim major disasters such as this and take credit for it. And this is part of their psychological warfare profile anyway, whether or not they were even involved. But for the most part, I think it's still premature. They still the FBI still has a lot of investigation to do in terms of his social media, his computer, his cell phones, if he had one. And so I think it was important for them to say so far. So far, they haven't found any connection. And so I think that that's important. I think the one thing that's emerging from all of this is that the man never had any firearms experience. He never had any military experience. But what you can tend to point to is his family history. His father was diagnosed as a psychopath, and for the children, this can also occur. They can begin to have similar psychopathic tendencies, particularly if there was a major breakup in the family or he was mistreated as a youngster. And it only manifests itself years later. And suicide is one of the symptoms. Of being suicidal, I should say, is one of the symptoms. So I think we need to get more information to understand this. I think mental health institutions need to be surveyed to see if he had any record of any kind of discussion. But for now, the terrorist link, if any, I think is dubious unless something concrete can be documented.
Michael, you mentioned that he didn't have gun experience, and yet the reports suggest that there were multiple weapons found in the hotel room. What do you think of this? Would you perceive that to be a lack of security at the hotel, or is it more of a problem? How did he get hold of so many weapons?
Well, it's my understanding that he was a hunter, so he would have access to guns. He didn't have a record that of any consequence that would have precluded him or barred him from obtaining weapons. And so he can probably have multiple weapons. Nevada probably has a very concealed carry, and also they do federal checks The FBI has this morning, and ATF have interviewed the gun owner, the gun shop owners where he purchased the weapons, although they're not saying what calibers were fired. How he might have smuggled into the hotel, first of all, there's probably minimum security at the hotels, unlike in Europe, where you have magnetometers and you have people running wands all over you as you enter a hotel. That's been my experience, but that doesn't seem to exist in hotels far removed from where there's been other activities such as terrorism attacks and what have you. He probably brought him in not only in a suitcase, but maybe in a golf bag that could have masked them. He might have had them very well hidden. The people who service the rooms don't necessarily rummage through people's belongings, so he probably felt somewhat comfortable, or he may have hidden them all together in the closet until the time that he decided to take action. As far as his ability to fire weapons, as a hunter, he would have some notion of shooting. Shooting down, frankly, especially if you're a hunter, takes a little bit of doing. But in this case, there were 20,000 people out there, so with a machine gun, he obviously just sprayed the area randomly. So picking a target, sharpshooting per se, was not a criteria in his case.
Michael, appreciate your analysis. Thanks for coming on RT. Michael Malou, former Pentagon official.